Hey y'all. I apologize. I'm all bundled up here. My body has trouble regulating temperature sometimes, and today is one of the days. So, my husband put up said made a comment on somebody's comment a couple days ago my about me being sick and how this has helped me, and I haven't said much about it because I didn't want this to be a whole sympathy thing. I wanted to make it on my own, but I also don't want it to be the elephant in the room, I guess. I don't know. And I also don't want people thinking that I'm doing the stuff that I do for any other reason than where it comes from. So I just decided that tonight I'm going to tell my story. So I think it's going to be in 3 parts because it's the only way I think it's going to make sense. So this is part 1. I'll call it In the Beginning. So, in the beginning, um, I guess the easiest way to explain it is like starting when I was 15, I was a member of a first aid unit that, okay, first of all, when you live in the DC area, like where I grew up is right outside of DC, and it's a different world there than I think, like even living further out of that ring, it's a different world. Um, so at the first aid unit, we had, 15, 16, 17 year olds that had Secret Service background clearances. And I was one of them. And what those clearances did was allowed you to be in secured areas where dignitaries were going to be. So, and then you had levels, um, at least, back then, where I had a clearance that allowed me to be, you know, near the president. Um, so, as I got older, I was able to be, or not older, but like when I joined the rescue squad, I was able to follow Clinton around and stuff like that for the inauguration. Um, so, when I was 15, I was with the first aid unit and volunteered at Shady Grove at the hospital. And because I was at the first aid unit at Shady Grove, we had people in the ER that were attached to the first aid unit and knew who I was. So I wasn't, stuck doing little things. I was like in the suture room, in the code room, in the casting room, stuff like that. And then when I was 16, on my 16th birthday, I joined the rescue squad because in Maryland, you can join the rescue squad. In Maryland, you can also become an EMT when you're 16, and I did. You cannot be charged on the ambulance. You've got to have somebody else in charge, and basically, you're spending that time being, getting ready because, you can't, as an EMT, you can be sued, but you can't be sued if you're not 18. So that's basically what it comes down to. But there was this whole thing back then. So at 16, I am now doing school, doing first aid unit, doing Shady Grove Hospital, doing the rescue squad. And then 17 and a half ish, I think it was the summer that I was 17. My birthday is in October, so 17 and 3/4-ish. I was able to start working for a private ambulance company in DC. And there we ran 911 calls for DC. Now they've got AMR that runs stuff for them. They can call in AMR to run stuff for them. But back then, they used Silver Spring Ambulance and Hunterman Ambulance Service. And I worked for both of them. Not at the same time, but I worked like 110 hours a week for them. And then I would still do my one night a week at the rescue squad, and then I would still, other nights I would still sleep at whichever, Silver Spring or Hunterman, or Hunterman, usually. Always Hunterman. I don't think I ever slept at Silver Spring. Not that that matters to the story. And then we got married when we were 20. We were teenage sweethearts, and we got married when we were 20. My husband worked. I stayed home with the kids, and I still continued doing my volunteering at the rescue squad. And then I started working for FEMA and worked at the National Fire Training Academy in Emmitsburg. And then they had me going to the director's office, James DeWitt's office, to work. Started off one day every other week, and then I was up in his office a few times a week, every week. And then I did, other jobs after that were, I could not do the trek to DC. It just became going to DC more and more and more, and I could not do it. So, after a couple years of that, I left FEMA, and because there wasn't an opening. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So I started working for the city of Frederick, and, oh, you were an EMT and you work for FEMA? Good, then you can look after the fire extinguishers, and you can do this, and, oh, we need to do bloodborne pathogen training now, and so on and so forth. So then we moved down to Savannah area, and I was trying to figure out, while I was pregnant with our son, who's now 14, I had gone back to school and was working on organizational management and applied psych degree. Since I had to be home, I couldn't just sit still. And I was always like this go, go, go person. Like always volunteering. While I was doing that other volunteering, I was also a year-round volunteer at Salvation Army. And, if there was a fire in our neighborhood or some kind of tragedy, I was the one that would, start the thing, or would be one of the major organizers for gathering stuff for the family, and just go, and did all the stuff in the house. Not because my husband wouldn't do it. That was just me. Just go. And then Sundays, we always went to Gettysburg or Harper's Ferry, or we always went somewhere with the kids on Sundays. So anyway, then when we got pregnant with our youngest son, I was 35 then and had issues with my blood pressure during the pregnancy, and they put me on bed rest for like the entire pregnancy. So I decided to work on that degree, but I was trying to figure out what to do with it. And one of the things that I had loved, I knew I wanted to incorporate teaching, because I love teaching. There's this moment when you are teaching people and they get this spark in their eye when they get it, and it's like the best experience in the world. With you as a teacher, that that you got through to them. And then there's the other part where you look out and you see this group of people that are just obviously very bored with what you're saying, so you change up how you're delivering it, and you see people perk up, and it's that same kind of, yes, I got it. I did it. And I just, because if people are bored, they're not going to get anything from what you're teaching them anyway. And so I had a huge passion about teaching people and helping people. And I knew that whatever I was going to do with the next section of my life, I wanted to incorporate those couple of things with it. And I couldn't figure out, what. I keep looking at all these different types of jobs, because I couldn't go back to being a first responder because of my knees. They were so damaged from my previous life from doing it. I had surgery, I think, 3 times on one and twice on the other at that point. And I just, couldn't go back to doing that stuff. So it's just, what do I do from here? And meanwhile, my husband, who's an industrial electrician, was coming home and talking about this safety person at work and her lack of common sense. Like, and even if you're not in any kind of industry that would deal with this, you probably will get it. She would write people up for not having the ladder tied off when they would climb the ladder to tie off the ladder. It would be utterly impossible to tie off a ladder without climbing up to tie off the ladder. And each time she would write somebody up for this, it would get thrown out by their supervisor or by her boss, yet she kept doing it. Now, I've got some of my own opinions about what the deal was with this person, but she was 22 years old and went to school but had no experience in the field at all, and that did not help matters. So as he was sitting here talking about this stuff, I started thinking, that's what I want to do. That's what I want to do. That's it. And that was the direction that I decided to take it. And with being in doing the organizational management and applied psych, it fit in perfectly. I mean, I already had a background with doing safety before it was safety, and with being an EMT and having the first aid background and understanding mechanisms of trauma and mechanisms of injury. And because as an EMT, when you get on the scene, the first thing that happens when you're dispatched on a call is you hear an injured person. So your brain starts automatically filtering through all of the possible scenarios of, okay, it's at Winnicksburg Apartments in this playground, so it could be off of this swing set or this merry-go-round or this, or it could be their bike, or you start filtering through all of this stuff. And then you get there and you start looking at the entire scene, looking at every clue. Is there a chain hanging down from this? Is there obviously, everybody thinks of the power line hanging down. Is there this? Is there that? Is there, a piece of wood that shouldn't be there? You start looking at everything. And you do it very quickly and without even, in a very short time, you start doing it without even realizing you're doing it. So, and what you're doing is you're building. It's the same thing with car accidents. You look at clues very quickly to figure out, how fast a vehicle was going based on what you're seeing from the other two vehicles and based on what you've seen in the past, particularly if you're dealing with a patient that is unconscious or is not able to communicate effectively with you or is unwilling to, because you have to, one, be able to communicate as much information as you possibly can to the hospital, and two, there are a lot of injuries, like with traumas, that don't rear their head right this second. Somebody could be perfectly fine and walking around, but I'm looking at this vehicle and know that if it has this damage to it, you should have these injuries. And these injuries often take 2 or 3 hours to show themselves. So you need to be in the trauma center so that when you crash, you're already where you need to be. So I was used to doing that anyway. So that was how I ended up deciding that that was where I wanted to go. But so it matched all of the things I wanted to do. It involved teaching. It involved helping people. It made it so that I got to go to work with my husband every day, which was, just a major bonus because we could spend 24/7 together and be perfectly happy. We actually prefer life that way. We're much happier when we're together all the time. And it checked all the boxes. So that's kind of how everything started off. I mean, that's my early life, and that's, yeah. So stay tuned for part 2.